the big story that we're tracking at the moment. Author Salman Rushdie has been attacked in New York. The attacker ran across the stage and stabbed Salman Rushdie, after which he was given immediate medical assistance by the first responders on the stage itself. The attacker, a male suspect, was immediately restrained first on the stage, and then he was escorted out by the police personnel, is now in the custody of the New York police. Salman Rushdie, meanwhile, has been taken via helicopter to a hospital. At the moment, we also know that the interviewer who was on stage introducing Salman Rushdie was also injured in this attack, and the interviewer is believed to have suffered some injury to the head. At least that is what the New York police has put out by way of the information, the initial information that they are sharing with the media and the public currently. So those sets of pictures that you can see there on the bottom left hand side corner is a video made by one of the persons at the venue when this attack, immediately after the attack took place, and you can see people rushing onto the stage. The first responders are there immediately rushing to help Salman Rushdie. The others they're trying to restrain this attacker. On the right hand side of your television screens, this is the helicopter in which Salman Rushdie was then immediately taken away to a hospital. This after immediate medical help was given to him right after the attack. Some details that are coming in at the moment by way of BBC suggests that the attacker tried to stab him close to the neck. We do not know the condition of Salman Rushdie at the moment. His health condition has not been updated so far, but we do know that the attacker was restrained, has been taken away by the New York police. However, the motive of the attack too remains unclear. Governor Kathy Hochul of New York has tweeted saying, thanks to the swift response of the New York police and the first responders following today's attack on author Salman Rushdie, our thoughts are with Salman and his loved ones following the horrific event. I have directed the state police to further assist however needed in this investigation. So this being put out by the governor of New York. Meanwhile, other details that are emerging at the moment, other statements that are emerging are from the horrified writers fraternity across the world and in America as well, who are talking about this incident being a direct attack on freedom of expression. Rishika?
Right, Maha. In fact, Sanjoy Roy, producer of the Jaipur Lit Fest, is joining us on NDTV at the moment. Thanks very much. Your first reaction to what we're seeing on our screens?
It's horrifying, and I keep saying that there is no place for violence. Sadly, we continue to see attacks on artists, on people who express themselves, on creative people. But violence, sadly, has been normalized not just in America, but across the world.
Right. In fact, Taslima Nasreen also joining us on the phone line at the moment. Taslima Nasreen, your first reaction. I know you've already put out a tweet, but how are you looking at these developments in New York tonight?
I think that Salman Rushdie is safe, okay, but someone could attack him, so that's really. I'm worried. I'm worried that what would happen to us who are not getting the Western highest security, and there are many people who are critical of Islam, many critical of Islam. They are from Muslim countries, they are from, they are from many different countries. And in the subcontinent also, there are many people who are ex-Muslims, who are critical of Islam. They are not getting security, and they are in danger. We are in danger. Even people who are protected and people who are not protected, we all are in danger, because if it can happen where Salman Rushdie was in an event, and Salman Rushdie got his personal security, and also during events he got extra security. If it could happen even when he was protected so well, then what happened to people like us who are critical of Islam? I think that it is very necessary to be be critical of Islam, because Islam actually produces so many fundamentalism and so many fundamentalists and also terrorists. I think that Muslim countries should be stop building mosques and madrasas, and which are breeding ground for Islamic terrorists. I think political Islam must not be encouraged. People can believe in Islam, but the state religion must not be Islam, and state must not encourage fundamentalism, because it's urgently necessary to separate state and religion, state and Islam. But the problem is that most Muslim countries are not secularized. Societies are not secularized. The Muslim rulers use religion for their own political interests. So this is a real problem, and the young people are becoming more and more religious, more and more fundamentalist, and more terrorists.
All right, Taslima Nasreen, stay on with us, but let me quickly point out to our viewers at the moment that we do not know the motive behind this attack. The attacker was restrained. The New York police, the only information that they've given out at the moment is that he was immediately restrained and taken away, is in the custody of the New York police. But there is no word on what the motive was for this attack. So right now, we are not jumping to any conclusions or linking it to the past fatwa that was issued against Salman Rushdie, because we do not know the exact motive of this attack. All we know is that a male attacker ran across the stage, pushed and tried to stab Salman Rushdie. The details coming through by way of New York police suggest that he was stabbed close to his neck, after which immediately the first responders responded to the situation, giving him medical assistance, after which he was taken away to a hospital in a chopper. That is the only information right now that is available.
Well, it would be purely speculative to say anything otherwise, Maha, as you're rightly pointing out. But Sanjoy Roy, it's been 30 years since the satanic verses.
First, I just want to thank you both for making that correction. While Taslima is absolutely entitled to her opinion, I do feel we need to step away from the religious conversation here and actually condemn all violence, every kind of violence, in every possible way, especially in this case towards writers and artists. So thank you so much for making that very pointed correction, and that's the reason I think all of us trust in NDTV, because you do considered news. But totally, as you said, 30 years since satanic verses, but crazies abound. Fringe elements are around in every part of the world, including in the Americas, as we know. The world is getting far more polarized than it ever was. Across the globe, you're seeing this polarization. And I think everybody who can has to stand together and push back on hatred, push back on violence, irrespective of religion, caste, color, creed, nationality, or any kind of divide. If we don't do so, we will all be consumed equally.
All right, let me also bring in Sadanand Dhume, Senior Resident Fellow, American Enterprise Institute, is also joining us now. Sadanand Dhume, if I can, and if you have any further details, first of all, I'd like you to share them with us. Have you heard anything about the condition of Salman Rushdie?
No, I haven't heard anything beyond what's already been in the news. The condition is unknown.
A very shocking incident there. In full public glare with so many people around, a man rushes and tries to stab Salman Rushdie. The writers' fraternity clearly is at least making this out to be a case of attack on freedom of speech and expression. What would you say?
Well, look, I'm going to take a position that's sort of, slightly in between Taslima Nasreen and Sanjoy Roy. I think that obviously we don't know who the attacker is, right?
Yes.
This could be some crazy person, this could be anybody, and so we're not in a position to sort of say with certainty. However, should this turn out to be an attack that is linked to his work, linked specifically to the satanic verses, linked specifically to the infamous fatwa that had been issued by the Ayatollah Khomeini in 1989, then this has very, very serious implications for freedom of speech in the West. Because what it suggests is that Mr. Rushdie, who over time has really been able to, carve out a normal life for him after having been in hiding for a long time, if it ends up being an attack that's linked to radical Islam, then of course it's a huge setback for freedom of speech and freedom of expression in the West. But we don't know that at this point. I mean,
right.
and so I think it would be unwise to speculate before we know the identity of the attacker and the motive.
Well, what we also know is that it was not just Salman Rushdie, but his interviewer who was also attacked. He's sustained minor head injuries and he's all right. Salman Rushdie, on the other hand, was airlifted, as we can see in those pictures. But do stay on with us, Sanjoy and Sadanand Dume. I'm just going to very quickly play out the reaction of the New York governor. Kathy Hochul has reacted. Let's just listen in.
And so it is heartbreaking to learn that within the last hour, a prominent individual, Salman Rushdie, was attacked on a stage in Western New York. Just before he was about to give a speech. He is alive. He has been transported, airlifted to safety. But here's an individual who has spent decades speaking truth to power, someone who's been out there unafraid, despite the threats that have followed him his entire adult life, it seems. And it happened at a site that is a place that's very familiar to me, a very tranquil rural community known as Chautauqua Institution, where the most preeminent speakers and thought leaders and politicians and justices and everyone come together to have the free expression of thought. So this is a place ideally suited for him to be able to speak, and that's what he was attempting to do just in the last hour before he was attacked. And I want to commend the state police. It was a state police officer who stood up and saved his life, protected him, as well as the moderator who was attacked as well. We're monitoring the situation, but he's getting the care he needs at a local hospital. We'll be giving more information on the identity of the perpetrator and the case that'll be brought in that part of the state. So I just wanted to share that with you because it hits right here, it hits all of us. But we are undeterred then. We are undeterred in our commitment to make sure that we call it out, we condemn what happened, we condemn all violence, and we want people to feel that freedom to speak and to write truth. And I'll continue to protect that every single day as my governor, as I'm your governor.
That's the
All
New
right.
York.
Yes,
Right.
Maha, that's a huge relief. In fact, the
Yes.
confirmation coming in from the New York governor that Salman Rushdie, is getting the care he needs.
Yes, the New York governor, Kathy Hochul, there herself coming out to make that statement. She pointedly ensured that she states that Salman Rushdie is alive. He's getting the treatment he needs. Also talking about the interviewer who was injured in that attack as well. And she speaks about how the attacker was clearly trying to prevent Salman Rushdie from presenting his views because he attacked him just when he was about to speak. The introduction was on and this man ran across the stage and tried to stab Salman Rushdie. Rishika.
Yes, in fact, Sanjoy Roy and Sadanand Dume both still live with us. So let's just get in quick reaction. So, Sadanand Dume, that's a relief there. Confirmation coming in from the New York governor that Salman Rushdie survived that horrific attack and is getting the care that he needs. Can you tell us a little bit about where this institute is located? Why he would have to be airlifted? Was this on the outskirts of New York?
I believe, you could gather this also from the governor's remarks that this is a kind of tranquil, rural or semi-rural area. That part of New York is very, very beautiful, and at this time of year. And then you have several places like that across the country, which are, far away from major cities, but people go there for the summer vacation. This is August. Many people are on vacation right now. And you have gatherings of, musicians or writers or places like in places like that. So I think this is that sort of institution. I would not read too much into what the governor said about Mr. Rushdie's state. We basically do not know if he's been stabbed in the neck. It could be quite serious. We should all just hope and pray that he's going to pull out of it. But based on what she's saying, all we know is that he is receiving medical attention, which I think we already knew. That was fairly obvious. It's not. I wouldn't read too much into what she's saying in terms of figuring out how serious his injuries are. We just don't know at this point.
Sanjoy, I want to come to you because you organize events where there are lots of authors, speakers. What do authors say who are controversial because of their writings? Do they feel the need sometimes to get some sort of official protection for themselves, or are they so free-spirited that they find it very restricting? I think, Sanjoy, you're on mute. Please unmute yourself.
Sorry, I was saying most writers leave it to the organizers of the festivals to be able to ensure that they're able to speak freely in whichever platform they've been invited to. I think it is the responsibility of the platforms to ensure not just the safety of its speakers, but of course the safety of every person who attends that particular festival or event. Yes, in the past we've had threat issues as well, but thankfully with the help of the state police, the local police, the central agencies, at least in India, we've been very effectively been able to ensure the safety of all our guests and our speakers. And it's the same across the world, whether it's been in Boulder or New York or Houston or Rome or London or Belfast or wherever. But growing, and there is this growing sentiment, as you can see, where nobody thinks twice about using violence. And this is not necessarily restricted to only artists or writers or speakers, but really across the length and breadth of every country. And that really is a worrying concern. There is frequent attacks in America, as we know. There has been so many. There's been over 300, I think, mass shootings or listed as mass shootings in this year itself. There's been so many attacks on women in many parts of the world. There's wars that have broken out. So we are in a very difficult space. And while we're all democracies, or most places are democracies, or most places that we work in are democracies, it's still a very challenging environment, and it continues to be so.
Absolutely.
Right. In fact, as Sadanand Dhume was pointing out, Maha, very interestingly, we've of course been trying to reach out to reporters, and we try to reach out to a Voice of America reporter who said that this is not actually happening in downtown New York City. It is Western New York. It's happening a little out of New York, as Sadanand Dhume was also giving us a little bit of perspective, which would explain why Salman Rushdie was airlifted to the nearest hospital. But once again, Sadanand Dhume, as Sanjay Roy was very interestingly talking about, how events like this, of course, do have first responders on scene, and there is police protection that is given to events like this. I mean, it's really unprecedented to see what we've seen happen at this stadium. This is a location that is known to host such events and lectures in the past, and in full public view. I mean, there's a stadium full of people, as you can see in those pictures. A man walks up on stage and first punches and then stabs Salman Rushdie even before he's spoken. He was being introduced when this attack took place.
Well, in places like this, I mean, they tend to be pretty low key. They don't tend to have a ton of security.
Sure.
I mean, the point is that people are on holiday. They're there to sort of nourish their minds. this is not sort of this is not a place or a kind of venue that one would associate with violence. This is not a high-profile rock concert or something like that, right? Where you sort of where you would. So in much of the country, I mean, despite the fact that there has been gun violence and there have been mass shootings, you know, generally, if you were to go to a place like that, you would find that it's pretty relaxed and pretty low key. And so this is, you know, quite a shock. I mean, I haven't gone into the details of this particular venue,
Right.
but I would be very, very surprised if they had ever experienced something like this before. And again, I think, you know, it all sort of, you know, it's all going to come back to when we find out more details about the crime, to sort of be able to draw larger conclusions about its significance to freedom of expression and to the world. But I have to say that on the face of it, it is not looking very good, because most people's minds instantly and understandably jump to the events of more than 30 years ago.
Sure.
Sadanand, I understand the reason why you are reserving your comment on whether this is an attack on freedom of expression or speech. But, you know, Salman Rushdie has been out and about. He is to be seen in public spaces, on the streets, walking around. Dr. Tharoor was talking about it a short while back. The attacker could have attacked him at just about any place. If he chose a venue where there was a large audience, walked up on the stage and then stabbed him, does it appear to be that the attacker was then trying to make a statement?
Look, I mean, again, we're speculating, and so I have to include a lot of caveats. But on the face of it, based on the information that we have, look, it could just be that there's somebody who wanted to target Mr. Rushdie because of his views, and because this is an event, the event would be advertised and so on, right? Now, if he's just walking around New York, you'd have to know much more. You'd have to know where he lives, what's his neighborhood, what time he goes out. It's just that much harder. Whereas if you see a poster and it says, you know, Salman Rushdie is going to be here, it gives any perpetrator, any attacker more time to plan. You know, and Mr. Tharoor and others who pointed this out are absolutely right, that over the years, Mr. Rushdie has rebuilt a normal life. He has not been in hiding. He has given numerous lectures. He has been out and about. And that shadow of the death sentence that had hung over his head for many years seems to have passed. Unfortunately, now, of course, that's the first thing that's going to be on everyone's mind again.
I'd request both our guests, Sanjay Roy as well as Sadanand Dhume, to stay on with us. Rishika and I'll be back in a bit after a very quick break. Author Salman Rushdie has been attacked in New York while he was about to start delivering a lecture, after which his health condition updates have only come via one statement by the New York governor, Kathy Hochul, who spoke about how the first responders were quick and gave him the necessary medical assistance that was required. Let's first quickly listen in to what she said.
Well, it is heartbreaking to learn that within the last hour, a prominent individual, Salman Rushdie, was attacked on a stage in Western New York. Just before he was about to give a speech, he is alive. He has been transported, airlifted to safety. But here's an individual who has spent decades speaking truth to power, someone who's been out there unafraid, despite the threats that have followed him his entire adult life, it seems. And it happened at a site that is a place that's very familiar to me, a very tranquil rural community known as Chautauqua Institution, where the most preeminent speakers and thought leaders and politicians and justices and everyone come together to have the free expression of thought. So this is a place ideally suited for him to be able to speak, and that's what he was attempting to do just in the last hour before he was attacked.
All right, so that was the New York governor there, Maha, giving that much needed confirmation, because remember, we've been reporting on this story for a little over an hour and a half now, with absolutely no confirmation so far on Salman Rushdie's health status. And Sadanand Dhume and Sanjay Roy continue to be live with us. But as Sadanand Dhume is saying, this is not something that we can really hold on to, because he's been given the aid that he needs at the moment, but we don't really know what his current health situation is. He was in fact airlifted in a chopper because this is an event that has happened which is not in downtown New York, but on the outskirts of New York. But Sanjay Roy, I want to ask you, as the organizer of the Jaipur Lit Fest, as somebody who's hosted Salman Rushdie, has there been enhanced security because of the threats he's received over the past 3 decades because of the satanic verses, or has that all sort of over a period of time become history?
I don't think it's become history. As the New York governor said, this is an attack on the freedom of thought and expression. And we are seeing more frequent attacks on artistic expression across the world, whether it's writers or painters or stand-up comedians, either they're being jailed or being attacked. And it is indeed a problem. In the case of Salman Rushdie, he really wanted to in many ways sort of live his life as normally as possible. New York was seen to be a safe space for him in the last decade or so when he transferred there. But sadly, that doesn't seem to have come to pass. I think the important correction or the important statement here is that the fact that there was police on hand who immediately stepped into the fray shows that he did enjoy some amount of protection despite not having his own personal security. You don't necessarily see this kind of police intervention so immediately anywhere in any attack.
But was it the same when you hosted him in India? How many years ago was it?
It was about 10 years ago, and there was a huge amount of security and police by every agency. Finally, it didn't come to pass. We didn't finally have Salman because of the security threat situation. Right. But he did come many times post that. 2 other conclaves and occasions. But on that particular occasion, we had every kind of sniper on the roof, etc. And we tried to, in this case, there was a threat from a group of organizations who were Islamic in nature, 21 of them. And we did negotiate with them. We did speak with them and explain to them that we couldn't resend our invitation to Salman Rushdie under pressure.
But very interesting, Maha, that, Sanjay Roy, there's someone who's dealt with a situation like this in the past, recounts how they didn't resend the invitation, but because of the threat perception or because of a law and order situation, he actually couldn't attend the Jaipur Lit Fest 10 years ago.
Rishika, before I go to Sadanand Dhume, let me quickly read out, and we are using Associated Press reports because their reporter was at the event, and now they've put out a lengthy news report on what transpired. And so the Associated Press reporter witnessed a man confront Rushdie on stage and then begins punching or stabbing him 10 to 15 times is what he's saying as he was being introduced. The 75-year-old author was pushed or fell to the floor, and then the man was arrested. Rushdie was taken by a helicopter to a hospital. That's what the state police have said. His condition was not immediately known. But Rishika, again, as Sadanand Dhume, you were also pointing out that despite the fact that the New York governor has put out a statement there, one is just waiting to hear any concrete message from hospital authorities clearly about Salman Rushdie's condition, isn't it, before we can heave a sigh of relief about him being all right? Sadanand Dhume? Yes. I think you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, so I just want to say, you're right. There are 2 really important things that we do not have answers for. One is we don't know what state he's in. We don't know how seriously he's been injured. Is it a minor injury? Is it a major injury? We do know he's alive, which is very good news. And the second thing is we do not know who the attacker is or the motives for the attack. So at this point, Basically we're waiting to hear, for these two critical pieces of information. And those are the two pieces of information that are going to allow us to make much better sense of what's going on.
Also, I understand that the governor herself was in Long Island, and from there she made the statement, of course, with regards to this attack that took place in the other side of New York. But also, would you say authorities in New York under pressure because of the kind of gun violence as well that has been witnessed in New York? And, some time back there was an attack about 2 to 3 months back. There was an attack on their metro station as well, where a man went on an attacking spree. So clearly the authorities too would be under pressure, really, isn't it?
I actually don't think that this is going to be viewed in that light. I mean, I think there is a very strong and intense debate about gun violence and gun control and mass shootings. And if Mr. Rushdie had been shot, then of course this would have fed directly into that debate about the easy availability of firearms in much of the country. The fact that this was a stabbing, then the fact that this is a stabbing, and the victim here was a person who has been in the public eye, lived under the shadow of a death threat, and in many ways is a symbol for free speech in the West. I think that that kind of sort of means that this debate is going to be a little bit different. I don't think that people are going to associate this or club this necessarily with random gun violence or random violence in the metro or anything like that. It's not a law and order issue. It seems to be a more sort of more specific targeted attack on a particular individual.
Doesn't it appear to be a targeted attack, given the fact that this was an attacker who climbed onto stage in front of so many people, attacked Salman Rushdie and his interview. And in fact, Maha, the update that you were just sharing with us from the Associated Press copy that they've put out, the Associated Press reporter, as Maha was pointing out, was actually at the venue. So they have, put out the maximum amount of information, and this information is also courtesy them, that he was surrounded by a group of people. There was, there was blood loss. And, there were a group of people who actually held up his legs, presumably to send more blood to the chest. So it doesn't appear to be, minor by any stretch of imagination. He was stabbed. It is unclear whether he was stabbed in the neck. What the Associated Press is now reporting is that he was stabbed multiple times. And that is clarity that we have now. So we just know that there was a man who began punching him and then stabbed him 10 to 15 times as he was being introduced. The 75-year-old author was pushed, he fell to the floor, and then this man was arrested. And Salman Rushdie, in those pictures as we've been showing you, was then airlifted. And as the governor confirmed, he's alive and he's getting the care that he needs, but there's really no clarity on what his health condition is. So Maha, it does appear that it was a targeted attack as far as what the Associated Press is reporting at the moment, and not a mild kind of an attack by any stretch of imagination, with what the AP is saying, that he was stabbed at least 10 to 15 times.
That's right. And from what the PEN America CEO is also saying, that she can't think of any other incident of public violent attack on a literary writer on American soil, any attack of this nature.
Right.
Clearly, of course, Sanjoy, I want to come to you. They are associating with this attack with a clear and direct threat to freedom of speech and expression. After all, he was to deliver a lecture, and that's where this incident took place. The first responders were there. The governor of New York also speaks about how the security immediately jumped up to protect him. But, if he was stabbed 10 to 15 times, will questions be asked about the alertness of the security there as well?
It's going to be conjecture if I even begin to take a stab at this particular question, because we have no idea in a situation like this whether security was requested by the organizers in advance, and therefore did it take time. If you remember, in the case of the Texas shooting, somewhat different than this. People, the cops stood around for 40 minutes before there was any action taken. Here we've seen that there was intervention, comparatively sooner, and that gives me to believe that there would have been security, whether the
Sure.
state decided or the organizers decided. But, going back to one of your earlier questions, attacks like this are done in public spaces on people with public profile, primarily by terrorists of this kind who want to make sure that the 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 mobile phones in that room or that venue capture every second of it, and it gets relayed
Right.
as it's been done across the world. And that's what their intention is. It is sad. It's a huge issue, and social media, as we know, is a double-edged sword in this kind of, for the lack of a better word, glorification of this stabbing incident or an incident
And
of violence.
while Sanjay Roy, you're right, there's a lot of speculation on social media about what may and may not have happened. We're sticking to reporting the limited facts that we actually know at the moment. And Maha, we have a report that's coming in via the Associated Press. Here's a report that one of their reporters has sent a short while ago. Let's just listen in.
So I'm at the Chautauqua Institution. It's a place of study and reflection and religious inquisitiveness, and it's now a crime scene. Back here at the amphitheater, there were about 2,500 people waiting to hear Salman Rushdie speak. He had just walked onto the stage, was still being introduced less than a minute before the event began, after the event began, and a man rushed from this audience up onto the stage and started punching or stabbing. It wasn't quite clear, but there was clearly some sort of blood or red liquid going in many directions. A collective sigh of shock from the audience, many of whom are here to, contemplate the problems of the world, not to see them up close. And eventually the scene was, the amphitheater was evacuated. It's now a crime scene. The man was detained. We're not really sure the status of Salman Rushdie. There has been a fatwa, an order for him to be killed on his life for many, many decades now. We're waiting to hear from authorities what his status is and what prompted this brazen, senseless, and very scary attack.
All right, so Maha, that's the latest update actually. The first ground report really coming in from New York, and I think, that was also a stand-up that the reporter sent before the governor actually addressed that press conference where she confirmed that he is in fact alive and getting, the care that he needs. But it has been a horrific attack and a story that we will continue to track. Like I said, we still don't have confirmation just how seriously he's been injured. But from what the Associated Press is reporting in New York at the moment, he was stabbed multiple times and had to be airlifted to the hospital where he is getting the care he needs. A short break here. Maha and I will be back with the latest on the other side.